Why are Americans so fat? It's a thing. It is a thing. I am living in Europe, and I have lived here 7 years, and I shrank precipitously when I got here. This is the after picture. When I first got here, I weighed significantly more than I do now. And part of that is because I have actively had the ability to make changes. But part of it is not. Part of it is just environmental factors. Because the U.S. does not have some of the things that they do over here. And there's lots of reasons for this. And it seems really simple from the outside. Just like many of the other situations that I will eventually be covering in this YouTube. Things like gun control, or police brutality, or racism, or any number of other things that seem really simple from a distance. When you get up close, you see that it's not quite as easy to fix as one might think. So I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why Americans are much more fat than people in Europe, and specifically Sweden. I'm mostly going to be talking about specifics of Texas, but there are quite a few things that are distinct American. And I will have to delve into some of those to get there. So the very simplest thing, and if you're going to be basically just an asshole, then you can just stop after this part, because that's all you're going to hear. The simplest thing that makes Americans more fat than Swedes and several other healthier cultures is the fact that people from the US eat more and exercise less. That is the most basic reason for the whole situation. They eat more and they exercise less. But it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that easy. As a matter of fact, lots and lots of people, even smart people, have said it's not that easy. So let's talk about some of the underlying factors that lead to Americans being as fat as they are. And don't get me wrong, there are some people who are just lazy. There are. Not a lot, but there are some people that are just lazy and just can't stop eating. And it sucks. But let's talk about some of the other stuff. So specifically, one of the things that is weird in the U.S. is portion size. Portion size is out of control. It is out of control, and even though there were parts of it that were incredibly misleading, the roots of this can easily be understood from the Super Size Me documentary. There are some disingenuous things in that documentary. There are some things that are outright made up or outright lies. But for the most part, the examination of how Americans' serving sizes got larger and larger and larger is still true. Just a moment. I will be right back. I want to demonstrate something. So, the idea of the supersize was intended to be a short-term thing just for a single summer. McDonald's was like, hey, we're going to do this supersize, and it was part of a promotion or something, and I don't even really remember what. But it became so popular because it was more food for the same price, and it didn't cost them very much. So they basically just made it more and more. Now, one of the other things is that serving sizes for drinks is insane. So I'm going to show you a demonstration. This is a normal sized Swedish cup Coke can. Normal, kind of the long ones, skinny. This is a large drink holder from the US. This particular one is from Bill Miller's Barbecue, but it's big. It is big. It disappears in there. So, and that is deep too, by the way. That is quite deep. This is at the back of my head. It is as deep as my big ass head. This is a large size drink. I can probably fit 2 or 3 of these in here. And this is not the largest size cup I've seen. This is just a normal large. I have seen an extra large and an extra extra large. The extra extra large is basically a KFC bucket full of soda. Now, part of the reason that soda is so freely given in the US is because it's really, really cheap to make soda. So if you have a fountain drink, then you only need the syrup, and everything else is profit. The cups are cheap. This particular one is a free. By the way, the reason we do free refills in the U.S. is because it costs almost nothing to use a fountain soda machine. You have to plug in a bucket of syrup, but then it mixes with water, and you basically just run that thing over and over and over again and make an insane amount of soda from a tiny amount of syrup. It is almost entirely profit. And that's why most places, there is a side to this. So the sugar here in Sweden, it ties into this. Sorry, let me have a quick diversion. The sugar here in Sweden comes from beets. And you use beet sugar. And it is like other kinds of sugar. It's not great for you. But it's not terrible for you. The sugar in Sweden is, if you have too much sugar, no matter where it comes from, beets, sugarcane, corn syrup like it does in the US, it's never good for you. But in particular, it's not particularly bad for you. Whereas corn syrup, which we use in the US, high fructose corn syrup, is incredibly bad for you. Incredibly bad. Because it is so sweet. And because it is ubiquitous. We use it in everything in the US. Everything from cookies, to candy, to soda, to bread. Our regular bread in the US is so much sweeter than the bread over here. It tastes like cake to some foreign people. And part of that is because in the US, we had something called the Great Depression. And in the Great Depression, lots of farms were closed down because they could not keep up, because everybody was poor and the people didn't have money to keep their farms going. They would burn their crops rather than give them to starving people. It's a dark part of capitalism that we have experienced in lots of different places. But in the US, we started giving subsidies. That's where the government gives individuals or corporations money to keep growing certain things so that the people wouldn't starve. And initially, this was intended just basically to say, okay, we're going to give the dairy industry money. We're going to give the corn industry money. We're going to give the wheat industry money so that those farms stay open no matter how bad the economy gets, so that our people aren't literally fucking starving. Because otherwise, people would run out of food and they would die. And then they definitely wouldn't be able to work and get the economy back online. So what they did was they started giving all of this money to these groups. Now, these groups initially were very, very good about that. They took the government money. They produced the things. It was good. But after a while, the production outgrew the need. And we started having way more than we needed of things like corn and milk and oranges. And so those things started using marketing and started using lobbyists and started using protections and started making ads that said things like "got milk" or "it's not breakfast without orange juice," or, you know, the only meat you're allowed to eat for breakfast is pork. There's just all these insane ad campaigns that convinced Americans that the world was this way. That orange juice was good for you when it's the same as drinking soda. It's almost exactly the same composition as soda. It has so much fucking sugar. But we thought orange juice was significantly healthier than soda. We thought apple juice was worse than orange juice, and there's no way that's true. So in the US, we started putting corn syrup in everything because it was an easy way to do sweeteners. Now, there's also a significant amount about this where the sugar lobby just absolutely destroyed other lobbies in the US. Sugar affects your body like a drug. Processed sugar, literally, your body reacts to it as if it is a drug. It does. You get withdrawals when you don't have it. You get euphoria when you do. It's insane that we don't treat this as basically a narcotic. But everybody loves sugar. It's one of those things that's wired into our animal brain. But sugar made up this thing that said that animal fat makes you fat. And most of the time, it's not fat that makes you fat. It's sugar. So we had sugar, and sugar had this stranglehold on the U.S. government. And they started putting out all this stuff saying that we need more sugar and less fat and less fat. And the thing is, when you take the fat out of things, it makes them taste not as good. And so we started adding sugar to make them taste better. And when we got to corn syrup, because remember, we're mass producing corn syrup at this point, and corn syrup is addictive and delicious. And the science is not 100% back on this. We're still studying it. But one of the main side effects that we, as best as we can understand, of high fructose corn syrup is that it makes you not feel full. So you can eat a full meal, take a sip of your drink, and then eat more. And so the biggest thing that I can use to explain this to you size-wise, specifically because McDonald's is the same everywhere you go. It's the same size everywhere you go. In the U.S., my regular go-to meal was a double quarter pounder, a large fry, a large drink, and when I say large drink, this size, remember, and 3 cookies. 50 crowns, $5, and that was what I ate pretty much any meal that I had. If I had a meal at McDonald's, it was at least that big. In Sweden, if I'm going to eat a meal at McDonald's, it's going to be a cheeseburger, a medium fry, and then I'm fucking done. I'm done. I can't eat extra. If I try to eat extra, if I try to have like a double cheeseburger, no, I'm going to be overfull. I'm going to feel sick the rest of the day because I don't have that corn syrup telling my stomach, no, you got plenty of room. So I can eat this much in Sweden, and in the US, I could eat this much. And it's because of the chemical composition of the sugar. It just makes a dramatic difference. But stepping away from just portion size, because portion size is a big part of it. In the US, we eat more. It's just how it works. But in the US, we also don't have health care. Only most rich people have access to regular health care. We have problems with our healthcare that comes directly from the fact that people don't go to the doctor unless there are emergencies. So quite often, somebody might have something wrong with them that causes them to overeat. Or they might have something wrong with them that they will never get diagnosed that causes them to balloon up in weight. Or they might have something wrong with them where they're depressed and the only joy that they get is from eating. But because mental health care and regular health care in the U.S. are inaccessible to poor people, it makes it significantly less likely that any of those underlying issues are going to be treated because there's no real health care. And even if you do have health insurance, which costs a significant amount of money in the U.S., even if you have it, quite often you have to pay a deductible before you can actually see a doctor. So like in Sweden, you know how when you're sick, it costs 200 crowns to go see the doctor? $20. And after you reach $120, you're done for the year paying for the doctor. In the US, that number is usually in the area of 6,000 crowns, 10,000 crowns before you start getting any benefit from medical insurance at all. So usually you will have to have paid out of pocket between $100 and $500, sometimes into the thousands of dollars, before you can see a doctor, before you start getting any support from your insurance. Now, similarly in Sweden, when you work at a job, they often will give you access to a gym. They will either buy you a gym membership or they'll have one on site. That is not a thing that is true in most workplaces in the US. And as a teacher, I can tell you, even though we had gym equipment, teachers were not allowed to use it because of liability issues. Now, in some schools, they may let teachers use it, but most schools, no. Even though they have the gym equipment, even though it's there, teachers weren't allowed to use it. Now, the other thing that makes it significantly less likely for teachers to be able to be healthy is the lack of work-life balance. So in Sweden, you work a certain amount of time, and if you're sick, you go home. That's not a thing that happens in the US. As a teacher, I was given 10 days a year where I could be sick. 10 days. Now, that includes if I got cancer. That includes if I was depressed. That includes if I got in a car wreck. That includes if my mom died. I got 10 days a year, and after that, nothing. Any day that I missed, I would not only not be paid, I would probably be fired. And that's how it works in the US. So you would save all your days hoping that nothing went horribly wrong, and then use them all. If you had a chance, sometimes they would roll over to the next year. So we don't have regular sick day support. And most schools aren't allowed to unionize. Some schools in Texas, they will not hire you if you're part of a teachers union. They can choose to do that. In Texas, we're called a right to work state. So what that means is not you can work. It means we can fire you without cause, because we got other people who have a right to take your job if they're more willing to do the stuff that we want them to. Now, as a teacher, you're also very, very stressed. As I mentioned, long work days. We also had to sign a contract at our school saying we only work 8 hours, even though you could not do the work of a teacher in 8 hours. You had to grade at home. You had to stay after. You had meetings that extended beyond the 8 hours. There was no way to adequately do your job as a teacher and serve the kids and also work 8 hours. Only 8 hours. Because there were too many things that had to be done and not enough time to do them. Now, part of the reason I got so fat is because I had 30 minutes for lunch, and if I had to wait in line in the lunchroom, then I would have had 10 minutes for lunch, tops. So I would drive over to the McDonald's that was nearby, wolf down a double quarter pounder, large fries, 3 cookies, and this giant ass drink. And basically, I would have that every day. And that's a lot of sugar. That's the thing. This is a lot of sugar. This is a lot. And remember, much smaller than this. Significantly smaller. So, it's a lot of sugar by itself. Not even counting the fact that I could eat so much more food because I had that and I wasn't full. So when you add that to the fact that most teachers who didn't drink or smoke or have really ridiculous amounts of casual sex or do illicit drugs, if you didn't do those things and the only joy you had was eating, then yeah, you're going to get fat. You're going to get fat. It's just how it works. And most jobs in the US do not have significant social support. Most jobs in you can't, if you are medium to poor, you can't afford the regular doctor. You definitely can't afford a therapist. Therapists are only for rich people in Texas. So for the most part, the only people who saw therapists in Texas are middle class and up. Working class, poor, no, fuck you. And so that is part of it, because if the only endorphins you're getting are from eating, then yeah, you're going to eat a lot. You don't have the energy to do social stuff. You don't have the energy to do anything more than just flop down in front of a TV. Because teaching, as a teacher in the US, you don't get the breaks that are natural here in Sweden. In Sweden, you teach, I have taught most of the time between 3 and 5 classes a day. Tops. In the US, most schools I worked at, I had 7 classes a day with 1 off period. And in between each class is 3 to 5 minutes. And the students don't get a break at all. They just have 8 classes a day, every day. And that's exhausting. That's exhausting for them. That's exhausting for you. Nobody has any downtime. Everybody's stressed all the time. And stress makes you fat. It does. It's one of the main causes to people being fat, is being stressed out all the time. Depression also makes you fat because you're more likely to eat just to get those fucking endorphins. And quite often, there are undiagnosed medical issues that help you stay fat or make you fatter over time. Now, there's also issues with the fact that you can't go to the gym because you don't have the energy or the time and you can't schedule it. And gyms are not regularly accessible like they are here. Not only that, you can't just walk places. In Sweden, if I've got 20 minutes, I can just go for a walk and not worry about getting run over by a truck. In Texas, most places don't have sidewalks. Most places don't have clear walking paths. You can't walk to the store to pick up groceries. In Sweden, if I feel like it and I got an extra 30 minutes, I can walk to the store, get groceries, walk back. No big deal. Yes, Dash, you're important. I'm using the voice. But in Sweden, you have that option. You can walk anywhere. I can go for a walk easily. That's part of how we lost so much weight that first year. It's because we didn't have a car. We just walked everywhere, and it was awesome. It was hard. One of our nightmares for that first year was chasing fit Swedes because people just take off and walk, and they walk fast. I still don't walk as fast as most Swedes. And it's one of those things where that's just part of it. My personal thing, part of the reason I'm so fat specifically, is because I have a bunch of old injuries that were never treated properly. When I broke my ankle, it was never treated. When I broke my hip in 5 places, it was treated by doctors, but it didn't heal. When I broke my knee, I never even told anybody it was broken. I just hobbled around for about 3 months by myself. I wasn't living with anybody. I didn't have anybody paying attention. I literally just crawled around when I wasn't at work. And when I was at work, I sat down and worked quietly and didn't stand up if I could help it. But that's just me specifically. Many people in the U.S. have horrible medical issues that they are not dealing with. And so, yeah, it causes them to be more fat. It does. But the last thing that's specific to the U.S. is that it costs more money to eat healthy than it does to eat unhealthy. I've been talking about McDonald's specifically, but McDonald's in the U.S., there was a while there where they had salads. But salads were significantly more expensive than anything else they had on the menu. And they weren't even particularly better for you. But because once you added the chicken and the ranch and the other things that were just fat, then the salads were no longer particularly healthy. But remember, I got that double quarter pounder giant meal for $5 with cookies. The salad that is about this big, significantly smaller than that meal I was talking about, and that salad was $7.50, 75 crowns instead of 50. The schools that I worked at, you could get the regular school lunch, which again, not super great for you, but still more than the salad. And the salad cost more than the cheeseburger. The salad cost more than the piece of pizza. The salad cost more than chicken nuggets. None of which were as good for you as salad. And the truth is that most healthy food in the U.S. costs significantly more than unhealthy food. It's easier to get processed, frozen, cheap food. In the U.S., it's easier to get fast food that is bad for you than it is to buy stuff that you can keep in your home and make meals from. So it's much different to have these specific things because it's just cheaper in Sweden, it's cheaper to make yourself a sandwich. It is. It's significantly cheaper in both time, money, and effort. It is significantly easier to make yourself a maca. But in the U.S., not only is fast food everywhere, it's so much cheaper than here. The McDonald's that I keep referencing, in the U.S., they have a dollar menu. There's like a dozen things on the dollar menu. I could get 3 cheeseburgers, a small fry, and a large drink for $5. 50 crowns for 3 cheeseburgers. The same thing would not even buy me a salad. So in the US, the fact that our food that's bad for you is cheaper than the food that is good for you is one more reason why lots of Americans are fat. So when you take into account our horrible emotional states, our lack of health care, the fact that our sugar makes you not full, the fact that most people have no concept of work-life balance, exercise is significant effort, you're not able to just walk anywhere, and you add that to the fact that a lot of people just don't think about what they're doing because we don't teach nutrition in the US. And that's the last thing that I'm going to say that's specific between Sweden and the US is that in Sweden, you have a course that teaches you how to cook. And as a required course, everyone in the country is required to take it. Your version of hemkunskap, home economics, in the US, that is a class for people who are failing every other class and are female for the most part. For the most part, the only people who learn how to cook in school are people who have failed a bunch of classes and they shove them in what they call home economics. In Sweden, it's required for everybody. Man, woman, child. Everybody has to learn how to cook. Everybody has to learn how to sew a button. Everybody learns the basic of textiles. Everybody learns the basic of woodcraft. It's amazing. Your educational system's significantly better in this way. Everybody has to learn how to cook. Most people in the US cannot make spaghetti. Think about that for a moment. The level of ignorance it takes to not be able to make spaghetti. Spaghetti is the simplest they can't cook pasta. Before I moved to Sweden, I could make 4 things. Hamburger helper. You cook the meat, you boil the pasta, you add powder, you stir them together. I could make that. I could make spaghetti, because again, simple as hell. I could make pancakes, and I could cook bacon and eggs. That's it. Before I moved to Sweden, I could not cook at all, because I never needed to. There was fast food around every corner, and you could buy frozen stuff. So much frozen stuff that was so much cheaper than having fresh ingredients that could go bad. Frozen stuff was significantly cheaper and significantly more readily available in the US. Now, in Sweden, I can cook probably 3 or 4 dozen things because the work-life balance here has allowed me to have the energy to go, when I get home, and make fresh-made scones, or to make chicken and dumplings, or to make beef stew. None of this was stuff I could make in the US at all. Even though, if you know anything about cooking, those are not difficult things to make. Those are not things that most normal people would be proud of knowing how to make. But I never understood how it worked until I moved to Sweden and had time. So the fact that Sweden's education system has it built in where you have to learn how to make the basics of food, where you have to learn how to make a stock or a roux or soup, how to make these things, when in the US, I would say most people don't know how to boil water safely. And that sounds like an exaggeration. It sounds like I'm being melodramatic, but I'm not. In the US, lots of people do not know how to boil water. And it's not, despite what you guys think, it's not because they're stupid. It's not just they are stupid. It's literally, they never learned how. They never had anyone to teach them. And so it's an ignorance thing, and it can be fixed. It takes time, but it can be fixed. Just like any other skill, you have to start from zero. And not everybody had a mom who was at home. Not everybody had a dad who made dinner sometimes. Not everybody had parents in the US to teach them how to cook, to teach them how to boil water, to teach them how to make things. lots of people in the US didn't have the luxury of parents. Because a lot of poor people, one of their parents is in jail or dead. And the other parent has to work 2 or 3 or 4 jobs just to keep food on the table. And if that food is processed and frozen, at least it's food. Because some people just don't have food in the US. And in Sweden, that's not a problem. It's very, very rare that people will starve in Sweden. But it is a genuine concern for a significant number of people in the US. And even people who have food, if that food is so unhealthy, they get malnourished. I've known people who lived on frozen cheese pizzas. That's all they ate all the time. It's the only thing they ate. That's not healthy. That makes your skin look like pizza dough. And that's not good. So there's a lot more to being fat than just can't put down the fork, go to gym. And don't get me wrong, I have no excuse. I have a work-life balance in Sweden that is significantly better than anything I had in the US. And yeah, I've gone down 50 kilos, and that's a lot. I've gone down a lot. But I'm still not where I need to be. I'm still not healthy. I'm still not fit. And part of that is because of my injuries, yes. But part of it is just because I have trouble caring about it. I don't care that much about my appearance, not nearly as much as most people in Sweden do. There are so many more people on the internet who care more about how I look than I do. Because I'm happy. I have a beautiful, wonderful wife who thinks that I'm pretty. That's all I really care about. Now, I would like to be healthy enough to survive to have children. And I would like to be healthy enough to survive to those children growing up. So I'm going to the gym. I'm doing my duty. I'm eating less. I'm eating healthier. I'm adding vegetables. I'm making incremental changes that I can keep up with. But for the most part, I have not done as much as I could. I go to the gym 3 times a week, but I could do more. I could eat significantly less. I could cut sugar almost entirely out of my diet, but I don't want to. Because I like having a quality of life. I like being able to walk lots of places. I like being able to go to the gym because I can afford it here. And I like the fact that I'm not always hungry. Whereas in the US, because of corn syrup, I often was. But also because I was missing food that was good for you. That's a dramatically different situation. So yeah, I'm still fat. That's probably not going to change anytime soon. Eventually, I will be Belgian or German fat instead of USA fat. I'm not Walmart fat anymore. I've lost enough weight that I'm not the kind of fat that you point at in Walmart. If you're an asshole. A lot of people just point at me and shout Peter Griffin. Because I'm a fat white guy who is wearing glasses and has dark hair. That's it. And yeah, it's rude. It's rude to call somebody by something that's not their name. I don't understand how Swedes don't understand that. If I were to just shout at people random names, they would not think that was fine. They would be a little upset that I was assuming that they were somebody else. But in general, I don't work as hard as I should. But that's also nobody's business but mine. Because one of the biggest things that is most frustrating to me, and I saved this to the end because anybody who's going to pick a fight with me on this, I don't really want to deal with. But the thing I saved to the end is that being fat isn't all that bad for you. There are a ton of people that have done tons of research, a significant amount of research, to find that there are plenty of healthy fat people. That many of the dangers that we associate with being fat come from yo-yo dieting, come from the fact that we gain and lose weight quickly instead of doing things in a healthy way. Many of the risks associated with being fat are significantly tied to the behaviors that come from trying not to be fat. And even if that weren't the case, we don't give other people who make lifestyle choices that are dangerous nearly as much shit as we give fat people. Fat people are the one group of people that you can always make fun of. Smokers, at least as dangerous as being fat. Significantly more dangerous. But I don't see people walking up to people on the street and knocking the cigarettes out of their hands. Riding motorcycles, significantly more dangerous than being fat. Base jumping, significantly more dangerous than being fat. Doing things without a helmet, significantly more dangerous than being fat. There are tons of sports that are very dangerous, much more dangerous than being fat. But we don't say to the local footballer, hey, football's bad for your body, man. Because it's none of your fucking business. And that's the thing that's very surprising to me. Because anybody is allowed to make fun of the fat guy. Even other fat guys. But if you were to tell somebody who plays American football, hey, that's bad for your brain, everybody around you is going to fucking hate you. If you walk up to people who are smoking and say, smoking is bad for you, everybody's going to think you're an asshole. But you can go up to the fat guy and go, hey, how's the gym going? And that's fine. It's a double standard, and it's fucking bullshit. Especially for somebody who's actually trying. And I am. But, you know what? There's a lot of assholes. And on YouTube, unlike in TikTok, when people comment, they actually increase my chances to have more people come by. They actually increase me being around. So I'll take it. If you want to shout at me, put down the fork, or go to the gym, or hey, you're fat, or Peter Griffin, or whatever, that's fine. That ups my my involvement, and I am perfectly okay with that. Peace.